scriptures and that all the prophets used to delineate the God that is the holy, the unique God. Allah is nothing more than a pagan God.
Secretary of Law has given the regulation that the only person that can revoke it.
No, we do not, Ali. I have to because Jesus loves me. I love everything because Jesus does. But does he love me? No, he doesn't. Who does he love me? That's why I love Jesus, because he said to put away the sword. What did Muhammad do to Christians?
Do that to you. I'll kill you. I'm telling you that. You say what you believe. And that's what we're hearing now.
Would you please welcome Dr. J. Smith?
Now, those pictures you saw are from Speaker's Corner. That only we do at Speaker's Corner. Don't get scared. We don't do that everywhere else, and I'm not going to do that this morning as well. That is a unique place. It's the only place on earth where we can do that. It's the only place where we can say anything we want. And believe me, we do say anything we want. Now, we do get beat up, and we do get shut down, and we do get knocked off our ladders. But it's a fascinating, I was there at Speaker's Corner for 25 years. I counted it up the other day, and that was 1,100 times I went down to that place every Sunday. It's only on Sundays. And it's the place where the Muslims love. Because Muslims come from countries, come from cultures which are very oral. And they love orality. And that's the best place to learn how to be oral, how to verbalize what you want to say. But it's also a training ground. That's where we test our new material. That's the place that we go and take it for the first time. Anybody's ever heard it, they hear it there first. Because there are 10 to 1 Muslims, usually when I was there, it'd be 10 Muslims to every 1 Christian that was down there. You're going to get an immediate peer reviewed. You're going to get their reaction. In fact, it's great because they create the theater for us. And it's terrific because that then we immediately put up onto YouTube. It goes up live that very day. And we find out what their response is. We see how they're going to react. We see where they're going to come with. And that helps us then get ready for the next salvo. So in some ways, what you saw there is unique. It only stays there. We don't do it anywhere else. It's only for London because that's the only place there is a Speaker's Corner. You can't have Speaker's Corner in this country because you have too many guns. Whether you like it or not, that is the truth. They tried it there on the beach in California and people got shot. They tried it in Washington Square in New York City and people got shot. So it doesn't exist here in America. But it does in England because they have the most draconian gun laws in the world. And as a result there, we can say and get away with an awful lot of stuff that we couldn't here in the United States or even on a university campus. What we introduced there, I can't even introduce it on a university campus because I'll be kicked out. This is called hate speech. This is called Islamophobia. And yet, all we're asking are historical questions. So what I'm going to do this morning, I've asked Ted if this is okay. I'm going to show you exactly what has happened in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, we've come across some brand new material that I believe will destroy Islam. See if you agree with me. You may not. You may not agree. You may not think this is that important. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take 2 services to unpack it. So this first service, and I asked Ted if this is okay. He said it was be fine. This service, I'm going to talk about Mecca and Muhammad. The next service, I'm going to talk about the Quran. Those are the 3 things that Islam absolutely needs. See, every Muslim, whether they are radical, whether they are nominal, whether they are liberal, is dependent on one man, one book, and one place. The man is Muhammad, the book is the Quran, and the place is Mecca, right here, Mecca. I've got this map up here because I'm going to be showing you exactly where I'm going to go. Make it as visual as possible. So I don't know if those on this side, if you might want to move over here so you can see this map because you may not be able. We should have really put it up on the screens, but I really wanted to make it as personal as possible, and I didn't realize we'd have such a big crowd. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the book, the man, the place. Now stop and think, do we not start from the same paradigm as Christians? Do we not go to a book and a man and a place as well, don't we? The book would be the Bible, especially the New Testament. The man would be Jesus, and the place would be Jerusalem. Why? Because that's where he died, and that's where he rose again. So we're going to do a comparative, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this is what I did 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago today, I was in London. I had to go back there. I had to go and do some filming back there. They're in the studios. But whenever I'm in London, I'm with Hatun Tash. Hatun Tash is a lady. She's from Turkey. She's only about 5'2", and she has absolutely destroyed the Quran. And I'm going to talk about her more in the next hour, in the next service. But every time, she is the one that's taken over my ministry there. She now goes down to Speaker's Corner every Sunday, regardless of what happens. She got stabbed in her head and in her arm at Speaker's Corner. It's all on film. You can go up on Fander Films and see what happened. She should be dead. The guy was just hammering into her with a knife on her head. Broke the blade on her head. There's no reason she should be alive today. But we've got a great Lord. And she has 2 angels called Harry and Larry. We haven't seen them, but the Muslims see them. And they made sure she survived that attack. Oh, she had to go to the hospital, and in fact, she fell unconscious, blood all over her face when she got up there at Speaker's Corner. And if you look at the video, after about 10 minutes unconscious, she finally woke up, blood was all over, she got up onto her feet, and this is what she said. Your God needs you, but my God does not need me. Kill me if you want. That's not going to stop the truth that we're talking about. You need to repent. You need to come back to Jesus Christ. Now, would you say that if you were stabbed in the head, knocked unconscious, blood streaming on your face? God gave her those words to say. What a woman. What a colleague. Can you imagine having 100 of her on your team? Even one. This woman, in the last 3 years, after she'd been interviewed by different news agencies after that happened, after she got out of the hospital, and she was right back down there at Speaker's Corner the next Sunday, and the Sunday after that, and every Sunday since, including 3 weeks ago. But when she got out, they wanted to interview her, and they asked her this question. Using this methodology, which is polemics, this is all polemics, she confronts the Quran right, left, and center. She starts with polemics, which is something you're not taught to do in any of your schools, and she ends with polemics. She goes right into mosque after mosque after mosque after mosque. She has been in 400 mosques all by herself. She's from Turkey. She desecrates our language every time she opens her mouth. God bless her. And she carries a bag with all these Qurans in it, all in Arabic. She doesn't speak a word of Arabic because she's from Turkey. And then she opens them all up and says, notice they're all different. Not one of them's the same. All in Arabic. I'll talk more about that next service. But what's fascinating about her, in just 3 years, she has brought 1,000 Muslims to Jesus Christ, all by herself. How many people do you know who have brought 1,000 Muslims to Jesus Christ in just 3 years? Going from mosque to mosque to mosque and confronting the Muslims with their own Quran. I've never heard of this before, and yet she's my colleague. When asked, how many imams have you brought to Christ? She says, 17. 17 imams. These are men who lead Muslims in their mosques. They've all had to leave their mosque. They've all had to go find other houses around Britain. All of them are from Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Not one of them is from Turkey, which is her own home country. This is a one-woman evangelistic machine. So I was on the ladder with her 3 weeks ago. I was there, and I wanted to introduce this brand new material on MECCA. As we were getting up on the ladder, I was telling Ted this just before the service, as we were getting up on the ladder, she turned to me and she says, Jay, I don't agree with you on MECCA. And I said, well, please don't say anything on the ladder about that. Just run with me, bear with me. I've got to convince them, and it looks like I'm going to have to convince you as well. And this is how I started. But I don't have the pictures with me. I should have brought them. I didn't think about that. But I held up some pictures of this country right here. This is Saudi Arabia, right? But it's only been made Saudi Arabia because of the Ibn Saud family, which created Arabia, brought it together in the 1700s. They eradicated all their opposition, and they became Arabia. So they got the whole peninsula under their jurisdiction, but they needed theological authority, theological legitimacy. So they brought a man named Ibn al-Wahhab, who was a theologian. He was studying Ibn Taymiyyah's material in the 1700s. They brought him together, and he gave the theological legitimacy to their political entity. So you had the mosque and the state brought together, much like we would have the church and state in the Catholic context. We separate the two, they bring it together. And that happened in the 1700s. So that happened 400 years ago, that this whole island, or this peninsula came under their jurisdiction. So you had both the politics and you had the theology amalgamated. Now, that was here in Mecca, and it's also in Jeddah, and it's also in Riyadh. Those were the three centers at that time in the 1700s. What they did then is they weren't really that powerful until the last century. In the last century, they found oil here. And when they find oil here, suddenly they became a superpower. And they started transporting and forcing this Wahhabism. That's where Wahhabism comes from Ibn al-Wahhab, who was Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab, who was the man that created the theology. And it all basically came down to two things. The theology of Wahhab is this. Here it is, in just two sentences. To be a good Muslim, read the Quran, follow Muhammad. That's it. That's all he was saying. Read the Quran, follow Muhammad. What's the Quran? Here's the Quran. Ted, I didn't ask you permission to bring this in class. You don't mind if I bring it in this building. It's already here. You can't say no. Don't worry. We're going to destroy this in the next hour. So it'll be nothing. And that's why this is the book. This is their book. This is the Quran, right? This is the book that they follow. Every Muslim, doesn't matter whether they are radical, nominal, or liberal, they have to follow this book. Read the book. But how do you apply this book? Well, you go to the author that wrote, but it wasn't written by any author. This book is eternal. It's always been. It's never existed. It never was begun. It's always existed. Can you see the problem? Read this book. How do you apply it? Follow the man in the book. Follow the man in the book. So that's what they have been doing since the 1300s. Now, of 200 years after Ibn Taymiyyah actually created this paradigm, a man named Martin Luther did the same thing in Germany, did he not? When he nailed up his 95 thesis there in Germany, what did he say? Sola Scriptura. Read the book. Go back to Scripture. Don't follow the church. Don't follow all these traditions that are coming from the book of Tobit and these other intertestamental books. Don't follow this indulgences. We are not to have this idea called purgatory. That's not in the book. It's not in our Bible. Read the book and follow Jesus Christ. Follow the man. The book and the man. The book and the man. The book and the man. Basically, what Martin Luther was doing is what the Muslims had already done 200 years earlier. And people are still saying today, when is Islam going to be reformed? That was their reformation. He was a protester. Ibn Taymiyyah, people hated him. They put him into prison. He died in prison for saying, read the book and follow the man. Read the book and follow the man. Just like they hated Martin Luther. So Islam is very similar to us. As much as that's going to make you uncomfortable, don't worry. That's as far as the similarities go. Because when you read that book and follow that man, what a different book and what a different man. We don't have almost any of our theologies are the same. I'm not going to get into that today, but do you notice which is the bigger book? This is the bigger book, right? I make sure it's bigger just so you can say yes. This is the bigger book. This is the smaller book. This is the bigger man. This is the smaller man. But here's the problem. When you look at the man, when you go back to Muhammad himself, you've got to go to here. Because this is where he was born, right there. Born in 570 AD, right there. The difficulty is that there is called Mecca. Now take a look at this and you'll notice, I should have a topography map here, because if you look at a topographical map, you'll notice that it's all green up here, and it's all green down here, and it's all brown here. Why is it brown here? And what has this been called? What did the Romans call this? What did the Greeks call this? This is known as Petrea Deserta. Deserta. Desert means desert, right? That's all desert. That is what we know. This whole area here is the Mesopotamia, the places of the two rivers that come down here. See the two rivers that come down here, the Tigris and Euphrates? That is where all the civilizations occurred. Why do all the civilizations occur up here? Because it's got water. If you have a desert, you don't have any water. Am I correct? Desert means no water. If there is no water, there's no vegetation. If there's no vegetation, there are no people. If there are no people, there is no town. If there is no town, there's no cities. There's no cities, there's no civilization. If there is no civilization, there's no history. How long did it take me to say that? 10 seconds, right? If there's anything you leave from this morning, that's all you need to know. Because any Muslim, and I hope you send this to Muslims, those of you who are following this at home, I don't know where the camera is, I'm going to be pointing to there, I think it's over there. Those of you who are watching this at home, this is all it's all being recorded, it's all going up online. I want Muslims to hear this. I want all of you to tell this to your Muslim. Give them this video and have them answer this question. How could there be any history here if there's no water? Now, what do Muslims say? Every Muslim says that Adam and Eve, when they were in the Garden of Eden, now the Garden of Eden in the Quran, in chapter 2, in chapter 7, in chapter 20, the Garden of Eden is up in space. It's not on earth. Unlike our Garden of Eden, which is on earth, their Garden of Eden is up in space. So when Adam and Eve were thrown out of that garden, they were thrown down to earth. Where were they thrown down to? Bingo, right there. This is where they were thrown to. Mecca. Which means that would be the oldest town, city, civilized place on earth, right? You don't have anybody earlier than Adam and Eve. They're the first humans. Which means that should be the oldest town in history. If it's the oldest town or the oldest city, someone somewhere should have known about it or said something or written about it. We have no reference to a place called Mecca until 741 AD. Muhammad died in 632. Can you see a problem there? That's over 100 years later before we even hear about this place. It's on no maps until 900 AD. No maps have it on it. Ptolemy, writing in the 2nd century, he talked all about Arabia in his, what he called the geography of Arabia. He talks about all the places, and he talks about Aden down here, and he talks about Sinai, and he talks about Najm, he talks about Taif, he talks about Yathrib, he talks about Khaybar, he talks about Tabuk, he talks about all these places, Gaza, they're all there. And you can see, they're all right here. That's the Western Plateau. Mecca is not on the Western Plateau. Dr. Patricia Corona in the 1980s noticed this. Actually, in the 1970s, she noticed this. She said, hold on, it's off the Western Plateau. It's about 1,000 meters off the Western Plateau. 1,000, that's 3,000 feet. You have to go down to get to Mecca. It has no water. Why? It's a desert. It's not even an oasis. If you don't have water, how are you going to accommodate the caravans that came? How could it be on the trade route, she said. It isn't on the trade route. She reads and writes 15 languages, all archaic languages. How many of you today read and write 15 languages? So this is a real prodigy. This is a woman who's unique. The first in the world to actually go back to the original documents. She was head of department at Oxford University when she did her book and wrote her book in 1987 called Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam. She decided to find out where this Mecca was. She went to all the documents from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way, or go in this direction. Where for you? Yeah, where's left or right? That's right. So she went all the way from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way up until the 7th century. No reference of Mecca on any of the documents. She went all up and down the coast here. She went up all and down the coast here. She went way over here to India. She tried to find any reference, no reference. What she found was they were all talking about this place over here. Agilis, which is in Eritrea today, in Africa. That's what she found. Reference after reference, all the trade went through this way. Why? Because it went up the Red Sea. Why would you take all the goods coming from China and the Far East, they came to India, they could go this way, because you see, that's all mountains there. That's the Hindu Kush and the Himalayas. So they could go that way, they had to come this way, and then they had to, usually they went across here to the Persian Gulf. But then you had the Iranians, which were the Sassanids, and the Byzantines fighting each other from the 5th and 6th century, so that shut down the Persian Gulf. They had to redirect trade down to here, and they, according to the trade route theory, which is all of you who know this theory, this is what I've been taught in all my schooling, they took off the trades here in Aden and they went 1,250 miles all the way up to Gaza, stopping in Mecca, and Mecca controlled the trade. Why would you control the trade from here if the trade is down here? No one ever asked this question until she asked this question. So she went back and did as any good historian should do. She went back to the documents from that time, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way up to the 7th century. And she noticed that all the trade was maritime for one very good reason. Even today, how do you send large goods anywhere? By boat, right? It's the cheapest way to send boats, or anything by boat. Even the big ships that go through there, they come from China. They come from all over the East to get over to the Mediterranean world. they have to come this route. Because if you just put a ton of goods and you go 50 miles by land, that would cost the same amount as 1,250 miles by sea. And the reason's very simple. You go by land, you have to have camels. Camels have to be fed. Camels need to be watered. Camels need to be guarded. You need to guard your goods. That means you may be attacked from behind a rock, or there might be behind a mountain, or behind a sand dune. You can be attacked at any time. But when you're on the water, you can see for miles ahead. There are no sand dunes in the water. There is no mountains in the water. There is no way you can be attacked. You can see it coming. Therefore, it's much safer and it's much less expensive, because all you need is wind to blow your sails. That's it. This is before diesel power. This is before gas was ever invented. They used the wind, and all the trade went up this way. All the trade went this way. Why hadn't anybody noticed this before 1970? Because no one had asked that simple question. Where's Mecca? You don't ask that question in a Muslim environment and live very long. It's the one area of study where what you find may kill you. And she got a death threat for asking that question, for writing that book. Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam, she got death threats for it. From Muslims, she had to leave Oxford University, come to Cambridge University. That's where I got to know her. And when I did my first debate in 1995, look at the date, that's 26 years ago, I did my first debate on this, and on the Quran, and on Muhammad, the book, the man, and the place. And she prepared my debate for me. I went to her the week before the debate, and she said, do this, write this, you say this, don't say this. And I looked at her and said, you know this material. This is your material. Why aren't you doing this debate? And she laughed at me. She said, Jay, I'm an academic. I have a chair to protect. I have an institution to represent. I cannot do this debate. But you can, because you have no chair to protect. You have no institution. You only have one person you're responsible, and his name is Jesus Christ. Ooh, She said that to me in 1995. She told me something I'd never heard of, I've never thought of before. We as Christians are the only ones that can debate this. We as Christians are the only one that can ask and demand and show the Muslims that they've got a problem, because this place did not exist. Look at all the historical annals. Listen, she didn't even go far enough, and this is what we just found in March of this year. As we were looking at all these, and I had my team look at all these different plans by Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC, 300s. He came from here. He wanted to find a waterway to attack Egypt. He didn't want to go across land, and he couldn't go this way because there's too many boats, and this way there's too many cities. So he wanted to see if he could go around Arabia to find a sea route to get up to here and attack Egypt that way. And the first one got to Bahrain. That's as far as it got. They went back. The second expedition got here to the Gulf of Oman. Then it went back. But the third expedition made it all the way around, and they went up the Red Sea, and then they returned home again. And the reason why they returned home is they couldn't find any provisions for their troops. So there was no food, no water for their troops. And you can't go far without food and water. So they had to return back here, and they never attacked Egypt by sea. Why? Because they were going up the wrong coast. They were going up the Arabian coast. And you look at all the historical annals, and you will see there is no ports here except for one called Yanbu right there to accommodate Yathrib right here. That is the only port that exists. But you can't accommodate an entire fleet with just one port. They had to return home. They went up the wrong coast. What they should have done is gone up this coast here. This coast is the western coast. This is Africa. And they have 5 major ports. I'm pointing them right here. 5 major ports. These are the ports that have been there since the 4th century BC. Why are those ports viable and not the ones on this side? Because they have water. And where you have water, you have vegetation. And where you have vegetation, you have people. And where you have people, you have towns and towns, cities and cities, civilizations. And where there are civilizations, there are ports. It's as simple as that. Do you see how simple this is? You can all repeat this, can't you? Anytime anybody comes up to and asks, why is it nobody was over here? Why is it nobody actually did any work over here? It's because there's no water. And where there's no water, you know the rest. And that's what we found out in March of this year. Those 5 ports are exactly 1 day's boat ride away proving that these ports have been used since the 4th century BC. Alexander the Great was not even aware of this. He was on the wrong side of the sea. And we have just shut that down. So there was no way to get to Mecca by land. There was no way to get to Mecca by sea. Jeddah, which is there today to supply all the supplies for Mecca, was only created in, listen to the date, 750. That's the 8th century. That's just 1,400 years ago. Proving that Jeddah was created because Mecca was finally chosen. Mecca was finally chosen. Now, when we showed this and we introduced this, there's so much more I could go. It could go for about, when I do a talk on this, it goes for about an hour and a half. We don't have that time. I say I only have 3 minutes left. That's correct, 3 minutes. I've got to bring it to a stop. Can you see the problem? If you don't have Mecca, you don't have any reference for Mecca. All the trade routes, everything we know about this place does not exist until the 8th century. If you don't have Mecca, then you don't have Muhammad. Because where was Muhammad born? He was born here. Where did he grow up? He grew up here. Where did he spend his first 50 years of his life? He spent his first 50 years of his life right here. When did the Quran get received? It was right here in Mecca, starting in the Hira cave, right outside of Mecca. Everything is dependent on Mecca. Adam and Eve were in Mecca. According to chapter 21 in the Quran, Abraham is living in Mecca. According to all the traditions, as many as 70 prophets all lived here in Mecca. That means Hagar and Sarah and Ishmael and Isaac were all here in Mecca. Which means we'd have to throw away all of our biblical material because everything we know about that happening is way up here, 1,000 miles further north. And look at all the biblical evidence. Look at all the archaeological evidence we have for Abraham, for Isaac, for Ishmael. You name it, they're all from up here. And look at what we have for Jerusalem. We have so much evidence for Jerusalem, not one piece of evidence for Mecca. Once you throw out Mecca, you throw out Muhammad. Once you throw out Muhammad, you throw out the Quran. No book, no man, no place. And all I did was show you a map. See how easy this is? I haven't even gone to talk about the coins yet. I haven't gone to talk about the inscriptions. We haven't even got into that yet. I haven't even talked about the buildings, all the qiblas, every qibla for every mosque up until 706, from way over in China, from way down in India, from up here in Iran, all these qiblas, that's the direction of prayer that they're all facing, are all facing Petra. Nothing is facing Mecca, not until 727. That's over 100 years after Muhammad's death. And it makes my job so easy. But see, you can repeat this. Just show them a map and remind them that's a desert. If it's a desert, there's no water. If there's no water, there's no vegetation. No vegetation, no people, no town, no city, no civilization, no history. You cannot build an entire theology, an entire ideology, an entire religion based on desert. You've got to have civilization. You've got to have history. If there's no history, you throw out Mecca. Are you all getting it? Do you see how easy it is? By the time I finished that, after going through about an hour unpacking it at the ladder, Hatun had been converted. She was so excited about that she came and asked me to tell her whole team. But more than that, if you go up on her site, DCCI, you will see she has 11 videos just on this material from what we did at Speaker's Corner since the last 2 weeks. This is now being taught. I'm teaching this on a master's degree level and a PhD level at Veritas International University in California. In fact, tomorrow night will be the next session. I'm doing this. We're now teaching 10 different courses, all on the historical critique, unpacking all this so people all over the world can get it. We have over 100 students now, and we've only been going 1 year. I'm also teaching it right now as we speak, this week, last week, and next week in Ethiopia. I'm supposed to be there physically. That's why I wouldn't have been able to come here. I'm supposed to be in Ethiopia, but have you all been hearing what's happening in Ethiopia? You need to pray for Ethiopia. This material we're teaching there in Ethiopia, because these are all pastors getting master's degree, and they all want this material because they are surrounded by Islam on all four sides. They are the only Christian country in the world that has retained their Christian identity for 2,000 years. The church in Ethiopia, the Orthodox Church, numbers 42 million. If Islam takes over Addis Ababa, Ethiopia will fall. You need to pray for Ethiopia. It's happening and no one's talking about it here, because all we want to talk about is Trump and Biden. We need to start talking about what's happening around the rest of the world, especially to our church. Let's pray for Ethiopia, pray for these pastors as we're introducing. They want this material because this is not hate speech. This is not Islamophobia, this is history.